Today we're diving into one of the most important and honestly often overlooked networks in all of human history, the Indian Ocean Exchange. Now, this was so much more than just a trade route. It was basically the world's first true global economy, connecting civilizations and totally changing the course of history, long before European explorers even thought about setting sail.
And to really get a handle on just how massive this was, let's start with a little mystery. Okay, picture this. It's the 1400s. A merchant in Alexandria, Egypt is selling spices. And one of those spices is a clove, a tiny, little fragrant bud that could only have come from one very specific place on the entire planet, the Spice Islands, thousands and thousands of miles away in what's now Indonesia. So, how on earth did it get there?
Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. That little clove traveled on the Indian Ocean, which was, for all intents and purposes, a bustling, interconnected superhighway of commerce that had been linking Africa, the Middle East, and Asia for centuries.
Okay, so let's get into the how. What made this incredible network even possible? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was kind of like a perfect storm of environmental knowledge, some brilliant technological innovations, and a powerful cultural connection.
First and foremost, you absolutely had to understand the ocean itself. And the secret weapon for sailors? The monsoon winds. Now, these weren't just random gusts of wind. They were predictable, seasonal currents of air. For half the year, they blew reliably from the southwest, and for the other half, from the northeast. If you knew the schedule, you could literally ride these winds like a free ticket across the sea. It made long-distance travel faster and way more reliable than ever before.
Now, what's so cool about this is how it shows this fusion of ideas from all over the world. Knowing about the winds was one thing, but technology totally supercharged it. You had Arab sailors who developed the lateen sail, this brilliant triangular design that actually let ships sail against the wind. Then you had Chinese sailors who invented the stern rudder, which gave them incredible steering control. And Muslim navigators perfected the astrolabe, a tool that let you find your way by the stars. It was a global toolkit, really, built by many cultures for a global network.
The final piece of this puzzle was trust. You know, the spread of Islam created this huge connected zone, known as Dar al-Islam, or the House of Islam. What this meant in practical terms was that a merchant from East Africa could travel all the way to India or Indonesia and find common ground, a shared language for business in Arabic, a similar legal system, and just general cultural touchstones. This shared world made doing business across thousands of miles so much easier.
So, with the right tools and the shared understanding, the Indian Ocean went from being a barrier to being a bridge. It became this bustling global marketplace, and the effects? Well, they were absolutely world-changing.
And this table just perfectly illustrates the incredible variety of stuff being moved around. It was like a global shopping cart. You had spices coming from Indonesia, amazing high-quality steel and pepper from India, luxurious silks from China, gold and ivory from Africa, and horses and dates from Southwest Asia. Cities like Calicut on India's coast became these vibrant melting pots, absolute magnets for traders from everywhere, all looking for these valuable goods.
And all of this trade generated a staggering amount of wealth. And you could literally see it transforming cities. Just take the Swahili coast in East Africa. Before this trade boom, cities there were built with mud and clay. But as wealth from trading gold and ivory started pouring in, those humble homes were replaced by grand buildings made of stone and coral. This wasn't just an architectural upgrade. It was a sign of a whole new merchant class rising to power. A class whose power was built on the sea, not on land. Trade literally built cities from the ground up.
And the scale of this wealth is just mind-boggling. Think about Gujarat, a city-state on the west coast of India. It was a major hub, right in the middle of everything. The money it collected just from taxes on trade, that alone generated more revenue than the entire kingdoms of some European states at the time. This was a massive economic engine.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just goods and money moving across the ocean. It was people. Merchants would travel to new ports and often just stay. They'd create what we call a diaspora. They'd marry local women, raise families, and build these incredible communities that blended their home culture with their new one. This created an amazing exchange of ideas, technologies, religions, and traditions, making these port cities some of the most diverse places on the entire planet. All right, let's switch gears and talk about a fascinating story that shows the absolute peak of this era and also how fast it could all come crashing down. I'm talking about the legendary treasure fleets of China. So, in the early 1400s, China launched this series of unbelievable naval expeditions led by Admiral Zheng He. And just look at this number,
At its peak, his fleet had over 300 ships and carried almost 28,000 people. That's sailors, soldiers, doctors, diplomats, the whole shebang. To put that in perspective, this one single fleet was bigger than the entire navies of many European powers combined. It's just staggering.
So for about 30 years, these massive fleets sailed all over the Indian Ocean. Their mission wasn't really conquest. It was more about projecting soft power. You know, setting up diplomatic ties and bringing new states into China's tribute system. Zheng He brought back all sorts of exotic goods and animals, including the first giraffe ever seen in China. But then, in 1433, after the 7th successful voyage, it all just stopped. A new emperor took the throne and abruptly shut the entire operation down.
And this slide really shows you just how critical that one decision was. You had one emperor, Yongle, who had this vision of an outward-looking, globally engaged China. But his successor, Zhu Gaoji, had a totally different view. He looked inward. He discouraged foreign travel and even made it illegal to build big ocean-going ships. The decision of one person really did change everything.
So why the sudden turnaround? Well, it really came down to an internal power struggle. The Confucian scholars who advised the emperor, they were really wary of foreign influence. They worried it would corrupt Chinese culture. They also saw the rising power of merchants, a class getting rich from sea trade, as a direct threat to the traditional land-based social order. And this inward turn had a huge consequence. The Chinese Navy had basically been acting as a police force on the seas, keeping pirates in check. When they left, the pirates came back, making the seas a lot more dangerous for everyone.
So, after exploring all this incredible history, we've got to ask, what can we learn from it today? Why does any of this ancient network still matter?
Well, there are a few really big takeaways. First, innovation is what drives connection. Just like the internet does for us, technologies like the lateen sail made their world feel a whole lot smaller. Second, working with nature, not against it, was the key to success. Third, and this is maybe the most important one, trade is never just about goods. It's about the powerful exchange of ideas and cultures. And finally, the story of Xing He shows us that these huge, complex connections, they're actually pretty fragile. They can be broken by a single political decision. The Indian Ocean trade route really was the original World Wide Web. It was a network of people, goods, and ideas, built on wind, wood, and stars. It's a powerful reminder that globalization isn't some new thing, but it's also not something we can take for granted. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about for our own hyper-connected time. What happens when our modern connections are broken?